Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith Rule, and welcome back to the Disney debate, where Kat Macberrie, Doug Macberrie, and I discuss Disney movies and Disney products. We go through the timeline and talk about all these Disney things, and we tell you about them. Right now, we are in the middle of the 101 Dalmatians Marathon. Thus far, we've had one pretty good film that's held up after all these years. We had one film that actually really improved upon the original. And now it is time to delve into the live action films of the series. But before that, how's it going, Kat?
Snow!
There's too much snow.
Yeah, it's snowing out. Thank God I'm inside and hibernating. If only there were black spots around, then it would be the perfect theme for this podcast.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if I have work tonight because they keep changing their mind on how much snow we have, so we'll see what happens. I'm pretty sure I'll actually have work tonight given that it keeps fluctuating, but you never know. How's it going, Doug?
It's going. It's going. Not much to say. I mean, I'm pretty much seeing what Kat is seeing.
Wait a second, did you eat cat? Oh my god,
we
you
live in
ate
the same
cat.
building. Why would I do that? You're the one who would eat anything, you fatty.
Well, you know what? I'm hungry right now, so, just don't tempt your fate. But anyway, so we are going to be talking about the live-action 101 Dalmatians today, in this snowy afternoon. 101 Dalmatians is a film that actually really lends itself to live-action, though. And I think if they were going to make anything to live-action, this was a good one to do. Granted, if you need a lot of puppies, you're going to have to work on getting a lot of puppies, but that's really the only budgetary constraint I can see for the film. And I think right from the bat, this film gets one major thing right, and in that it's a good visual adaptation of the book. It's very simple, it's very easy to create, but they did a really good job creating this atmosphere and basically setting everything up once again. For the most part, the live-action version is very similar to the original one. It's, you have Anita and Roger meet up, they get married, and Cruella tries to take out the dogs because she wants a fur coat. There are several major differences, and in many respects, I do feel that the live-action really does improve on the original. And in some aspects, I feel like it's a little bit dated because this is a 90s film. This was made in 96. But before we get into that, Kat, why don't you give some brief thoughts about the live-action version of 101 Dalmatians?
Okay, well, here's the thing, I love this movie when I was younger, a whole lot. It was one of the first live action adaptations I'd ever seen, and it kind of was, I wouldn't call it the first. I think the first was The Jungle Book. But yeah, this one, I loved it when I was a kid. I loved seeing all the real life personifications of the characters that I grew up with, as well as all the dogs doing all these tricks and everything. Watching it again, I still do kind of like it, and I do feel in ways it does improve a few problems, or at least expands upon a few things that we never find out about in the original film. Unfortunately, there are other issues I have. Again, it's because the film does date itself in certain aspects. Because I think one of the first mistakes it made was that it takes place in, at the time, modern day. So you can definitely tell this is like a 90s film, and then you can sort of tell where the story deviates from the original movie and becomes sort of like a different film, because as I don't think a lot of people remember this, but John Hughes is the one that helped write the movie. And yeah, for those who don't know, John Hughes off the bat, yeah, he created Home Alone, so that should tell you what to expect from this. So, and yeah, some of that stuff definitely shows. So yeah, when we watched this, like I said, there was a lot of things I definitely did like that I think still held up, but then others, I can't really say I would agree with those choices had it been made today.
I mean, personally, I grew up with this as a kid, and I really enjoyed it as a kid because it's very much aimed as a kid's film, much more than the original. The original had some really dark tones, and this does kind of go some places, but for the most part, this is a lighthearted 90s comedy. It's meant to make kids entertained, and I think it does a good job with that, but I also think what it does right is that it really gives a lot more I want to say atmospheric weight to some of these situations, because a lot of the scenes with Cruella have just the perfect the perfect atmosphere given to them, and it's not just the cinematography, it's the sound design and the sound mixing and like everything done for this character makes her much more of a villainous presence than even in the original film. And like just a lot of it, watching this again is very enjoyable, but I think, I still love it, but I can definitely see the problems as I've gotten older. A lot of it does feel very kidified. A lot of it does feel like it suffers from Home Alone syndrome, where like the ending feels a lot like Home Alone 5. Like this is another one of those wacky traps, and these people should be dead.
Mm-hmm.
But we will get into that. However, I know that Doug has some very different thoughts. I still enjoy the film. I still have a lot of fun watching it. Doug, why don't you take it away?
So yeah, I mean, I remember watching this with my dad back when it came out in theaters, and obviously I don't want to be too biased, and I'm such a fan of the original animated thing, but I did not like the movie then, and I feel like a little less angry at it now, but I still don't really like this film. I think back then, like when I was a kid, I appreciated Glenn Close and some of the things that they've did, and I can see, some improvements made now that I've grown up. But on the whole, I felt like it was a little too comedic. I felt also the lack of, the dogs actually being able to talk kind of loses something. I think one thing I will say that was good, I think they actually kind of nail Nanny in that, they said in the original that she was kind of almost canine herself, and I do feel they kind of get that in this. But aside from that, I don't really think there was, much to it. Yeah, it's definitely a dated film considering they turned, Roger from a musician into a video game designer. So it's like, yeah, you've got that going for it, that it's, really a product of its time. And yeah, I mean, there's so much slapstick in something that it really loses something for me. It's like, if you like the movie, that's fine, but it wasn't for me.
So we already know the story of 101 Dalmatians, and for the most part, it's intact here. There are several major changes, and the biggest one is that this film focuses a lot more on Anita, especially in the beginning, and it ties a lot of what's going on with Cruella De Vil to her. Now, Cruella De Vil here is not her childhood friend. Instead, she works for her company. She is a fashion designer making all different types of fur coats. and you get to see all the different designs that Cruella has made and stuff. And to be honest, like, these are some really great fashion designs. I could definitely see these being used today, even some of the more outlandish ones, because they definitely have a certain fashion air to them that still works even today. And I think this is a nice change because it explains how Anita was able to afford everything beforehand and like how they were able to get by. And it also explains much better the connection between her and Cruella De Vil. And I think that's the really big change that worked for me, because in the original, like we said, Cruella was just there. She was a childhood friend, and she kept coming asking about puppies. And, after the first time, even if she was my friend, I would have just been like, sorry, no, bye. Here, it's her job. It's her job to design stuff, and Cruella sees a design for spots, and she adds a little bit more to it, but basically, like, she has a reason for wanting, dog fur, because she wants to make this coat. And you can definitely see she has some sort of beginnings to her sickness for fur, and you get to see a little bit more insight into that. And I think that's, that entire change about why Cruella is asking Anita for this stuff, why she offers to buy the puppies, and why she just drops in randomly. Well, she is her boss. Like, there are really good things, I think, for this change. And if I had to pick anything, I think this was what the movie did right the most.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I like how they did expand upon their relationship and gave a catalyst for why everything in the movie happened. They even go a little further by showing Cruella's obsession with fur, by showing that she actually commissions this underground animal slayer to go and kill animals and then design their furs into wearable fashion, like as we see at the beginning of the movie, where a tiger from the zoo suddenly turned up dead with its skin missing. Like that's some dark shit right there, but it's like it kind of is fitting of Cruella in a sense, and it gives you a good sense of foreboding when she starts making plans for the puppies. So yeah, like, the original may have been dark, no doubt, and this one is a lot goofier in tone, but the way they set that up and the way they portray her obsession with fur is truly disturbing in this, especially when you see how it happens with another animal firsthand.
And going off of that, the character of Skinner, entirely new character created for this, and I think this is a necessary addition. Jasper and Horace in the original did a good job of being both menacing and comedic, but I think here, where they separate the characters, where now Jasper and Horace have their own kind of comedic characters, but more personality, and Skinner is the one without the personality, but he's the personification of just, an evil, villainous figure. And he's someone that whenever he appears in the film, you're afraid, because, like, he doesn't say anything, he doesn't do anything, he's just a scarred man who's mute, and when he comes, something bad don't happen.
Oh, he scared the shit out of me as a kid. Every time he appeared on screen, it was like, he was like this guy with like this horrible, like, ripped out throat, and he would like moan every time he was like pissed off, and then you saw all of his tools and stuff he uses to kill animals, and it's like, oh god. But it made sense to like add him though, because that was one thing that was confusing me, is that Cruella, she hired Jasper and Horace not only to kidnap the puppies, but to kill them and skin them as well. And it's like, well, what do they know about making fur coats? They're just petty thugs. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, and it's not like, skinning animal furs and making them into a coat is a simple process. Like, it's not. It's rather intensive, and you got to be careful, otherwise you can ruin it. So I was like, kept wondering, like, well, how the hell are they supposed to get like all of those coats done within a single evening and get it ready for Cruella without anything bad happening to them? So at least this way that you see she has like a black market expert who knows all this shit. So yeah. Yeah, this Skinner still scares me even when I was watching this, like, especially the scene where he goes up to this one lone puppy and it's like, oh no, oh no, oh no, poor puppy.
Yeah, so I think those two changes immediately are the best ones in the film. Doug, would you agree with this?
I mean, on the one hand, I would say that it makes Cruella kind of removed a bit more from, the actual dealings. Whereas, you'd think that, in the original animated one, she might have been the one to do it herself, or, she might have had somebody on the side, basically the equivalent of Mr. Skinner, that we just would never see. So, I mean, again, it's one of those things where it does kind of take some of the sting out of it and really makes it more comedic, while at the same time there is that little bit of a scary thing. To be honest, though, I completely forgot about Mr. Skinner until we rewatched the movie. He really did not leave that big of an impact on me.
I don't know, because, like, I think what they needed to do with Cruella is you need to go one of two ways. You either need to give her personality like they did in 101 Dalmatians 2, or you need to give her something to bounce off of, because, like, she did a lot in the original, but at the same time that ties her too much to the crimes, and I feel like here it builds up to that point. She doesn't get her hands dirty immediately, and I think the progression of her just going after these dogs makes sense, because think about it, she's rich. She has this huge-ass company. Why would she get her hands dirty?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd agree with that, yeah.
pretty much. It's just a shame shame the movie doesn't follow through with that to the end, but we'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like, I think you needed Skinner. They again made Jasper and Horace a little bit more comedic, but also I think they gave them a lot more personalities. And so, like, that first half of the first half of the changes for the movie worked. Where it didn't was, like, they changed a lot of stuff with how things work. Like, obviously you said before that the dogs don't talk, and we don't get subtitles, so we don't understand what's going on through their heads, and that's a big misstep. At least give us subtitles, because, like, in the original, they had voices and they had presence and personality. Here, we just see dogs reacting, and that's not enough.
I mean, the one good thing that the movie had going for it is that it at least had, the first movie, so you can sort of tell already what the dogs were thinking, because you knew that that's what the direction that they were going in. But I can imagine if we were watching if this movie was just its own original thing, we probably wouldn't have understood the animals quite as well. And, like, I mean, it is possible to do a movie where it's just, voiceless animals or creatures and stuff, because, I mean, heck, Wall-E did it, since the first 30 minutes were, basically silent. But yeah, in this case, I don't know. I agree with Doug. It kind of lost some of its charm and magic, and I obviously see why they didn't give the animals voices, since, again, they were trying to make it more modern day. Not to mention they had all these, big name actors already bringing their personalities to the screen. But I don't know. It did kind of lose some of it, and it was kind of a shame, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. There's just something lost in the transition. And the other thing is that the second half has been very much dumbed down. Now, I will say one thing. I think that the climax in the house was a little bit better, because while I don't think it dragged in the original, I think it's a little bit more streamlined here, where we have less action in the house. But, like, they dumbed everything down, and again, these people should be dead multiple times over. Essentially, they turned the house sequence into a Home Alone sequence, where you have a bunch of different random animals going and messing with Jasper and Horace. And this works in some aspects, in others it does not. It's kind of inconsistent because I feel like initially, like when they're messing with them, like starting the car and having the woodpecker peck on the door and stuff like that, like that's kind of funny. But as things go on, like having them electrocuted by the fence when they should be dead, or having Cruella getting kicked by a horse and surviving somehow, like it just, the way it escalated was very weird, and I don't think they should have done some of those things. And then there's one part where Horace, and was it Jasper or Horace who fell in the lake?
That was Horace.
Yeah, Horace falls in the lake, and he climbs out, and then he starts crawling, and then he's immediately frozen. And I'm like, no, you're dead, because he stops moving. And then you see him later, and he's just saying, oh, it's too cold, because the heater in the car doesn't work, and yet he's still functioning. It just, like, they're trying to make it into a cartoon without actually being cartoon characters, and it just doesn't work here. And it's Home Alone 3 syndrome. Like, after Home Alone 2, like, there were things that just went too far. Electrocution is too far. Like stuff like this where it's not funny, it's just it's almost like torture porn in a sense. It's weird, and I don't think it works. And so like I feel like the way they made everything too much like Home Alone, obviously they were cashing in, but it felt like they were trying too hard.
Yeah, again, it's the problem with transitioning what was an animated film into a modern live action adaptation, is that you can't exactly do the same sort of slapstick, over the top goofy things that you could with the first film. Because granted, when Horace and Jasper got kicked by the horse in the original, they should have died, but but at the same time you're like, it's an animated movie, it's to be expected, I'll let it slide. But if you see the same thing happening in a live action, it's like it's harder to buy. Like, whenever you see stuff like that, especially when they try to make it modern day, they try to make it so that's taken a little more seriously and made to be more believable and realistic. Stuff like that is just jarring, and it's just hard. It's hard to swallow.
Especially since up until this point it has been realistic. Like, if you look at everything up until that climax, like, everything for the first half has been completely 100% serious. Nothing was cartoony. The tone was consistent. Aside from maybe Glenn Close, but, like, we'll get into that in a little bit, but I feel like she actually fit a lot more. Like, there's just a lot of things in that second half that I felt it just was either too far, or they were trying too hard to get a reaction out of the kids and not leaving anything for the adults. Now, granted, overall with the story, I still really like it. I don't like that they dumbed it down into a 90s, like, like Three Ninjas, basically a Home Alone action flick. And yeah, I don't like that, but I still think overall the changes do work for the most part. Not everything works, but I liked a lot of what they did, and I also liked them changing Roger to a video game designer.
Ugh.
Yes, it does date the film, it does, but I always found that kind of funny because he's designing a video game, the actual video game for the movie. I know it's kind of silly, but like I remember playing the game, like it just.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's something I did not like, because that was obviously a plug-in for their video game. Because, like, first of all, I liked Roger from the original one. Like, he was charming, he was funny, and granted, you didn't really know what his job was, given that all he did was like write music, and if it was good enough, it ended up on the radio. But at the same time, you kind of rooted for him because he was kind of an underdog in that sense and everything. But then they make him into an American video game designer who lives in England for some reason. And he's kind of a dick. So, Yeah, I did not like that change. Like I felt the whole thing was like really, a real like cash grab. It's like, oh, we got this video game that we made for to be associated with this movie, but we need to push it somehow. Let's just stick it right in the movie. We know the kids will buy it if they see it in the movie. I just felt it was really manipulative is all.
I mean, I can understand that, but personally, like, I can agree that I didn't really like Roger that much. He's not a very fleshed out character. It's actually the opposite of the animated film. Anita has more character and personality in this one, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I agree. I didn't like Roger as a character, but I did like the whole video game designer aspect. But maybe that's because I like video games. That's me. Let's get into the characters. Let's start with Cruella, and we'll move down the line. Kat, what did you think of the new Cruella?
She is perfect. Absolutely perfect. I'm sorry, Glenn Close was like born to be this character. Like she just embodies her so much, and in a way I think even improves upon the original character. Cause like it's so weird. Like I grew up with the image of Glenn Close as Cruella my whole life, so it's hard to imagine anybody else. But I don't know what. Like she looks like she's having so much fun embodying the role. It's hard not to like her, even when she's like supposed to be portraying a despicable character. It's like she's scary, she's intimidating, but at the same time she's entertaining, and you kind of can't help but like love every scene that she's in. And true, she does like ham it up a whole lot and eats the scenery at times, but oh my god, she's just so perfect for the role. It's like it's hard to imagine any other Cruella. It's like and I just love the parts where like she has an evil laugh, or she's like screaming at the top of her lungs. Like I just like I shouldn't like it because it's so corny, but I do, and it's amazing. And it's funny because I looked up to see who other roles were considered for the part of Cruella, and yeah, I couldn't really see them either. They mentioned that Sigourney Weaver was supposed to be Cruella at one point, but that didn't fall through. And then they had Kathy Moriarty would have been Cruella, which I think would have been interesting because she's a rather intimidating actress, but they decided not to because she was too scary in her screen test. So I think I honestly think Glenn Close was a good combination of the two. You know, she was like, she's charismatic, she's sophisticated, she gets really corny and hammy, but at the same time, you can't help but just be in awe of her.
And what do you think, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree, and it's like I remember liking her most as a kid and feeling she really fit, the role, almost kind of, at times forgetting the original actress and thinking that, she sounded and acted a lot like Cruella in the animated film. And I feel like this film doesn't really do her justice. Like, I feel like they should have given her, all of what the animated film of Cruella had, and Glenn Close probably would have done it perfectly. So it's just, it feels like the script in this really kind of drags her down later on. And it's kind of a shame. It's like, granted, she's fun, but, obviously, once you associate, the really bad slapstick and everything, it really does kind of put a damper on her performance. But like I said, she does the best with what she's given. And it's like, if they could redo it and like actually make her, go full Cruella, then I'd probably enjoy her performance a lot more.
I can certainly agree with that. I honestly thought Glenn Close was the best part of this movie. I think a lot of people will agree with this because Glenn Close was pretty much born to play this part. And what really sells it is her entrance. The initial entrance she has in the movie. She comes out of her car. You only see like bits and pieces of her as she walks by, and then you see a close-up of her face and like the reveal of like this woman. And I think it's just a much better character than even the original, because the original was a greatly designed character, But this person, like, she has presence and couture, and she's clearly high fashion, high society, high style, and she owns every single moment she's in there, and no one even decides to question her. Like, if anyone even looks at her funny, like, her assistant is terrified of her, and anytime, like, he does anything slightly wrong, she lets him have it. She has this commanding presence, and yeah, she goes over the top with her jokes and like, her laughter, but that kind of suits the character, because she's the king of the world. She controls them all. What does she care if they see her, like, being a little bit evil? She can end their lives in an instant. Like, she can end their careers. And she does that to Anita in the film, and it makes so much sense why everyone is afraid of her. And she is the perfect villain.
Actually, I think that kind of drags her down a bit, if I may say, because it turns her into a woman scorned. Because she gets upset over the fact that Anita gets married. That, she thinks that her performance will suffer just because she's married now, and I guess she'll get distracted. And it's like, if based on what we're seeing with Anita, it doesn't seem like that would happen. But it's like, wow, you're really gonna fire her over that?
I blame that more on the dated screenplay than anything else, because unfortunately a lot of people, even back at that point, still had that mindset, like, well, if a woman's not in a big, a big flashy, like, high earning career, and they decide to become housewives, then clearly they're wasting their potential and yada yada. I think that was their attempt to make sort of like a feminist statement or something, but, or at least to make the feminist statement look bad. But yeah, I do agree that that is a weak part of the movie, and it does kind of not make sense, especially given that Anita's already given Cruella what she wants, so it's like, what the hell else is she pissed off about?
Yeah. I mean, granted, that kind of message is very dated. Unfortunately, again, this is the 90s, and, it's kind of a weird part of the film, but I do like that she really does revel in everything she does. She owns every scene she's in, and not until the end does she become undignified. Like, the ending bits where she gets, like, everything happens to her. Some of it is funny, like the stuff with the skunk, but, like, a lot of it is just unnecessary, and honestly kind of degrades her character a little bit, because she's kicked around by all these animals, and yeah, stuff happened in the original, but she kept her dignity until the very end in the original, and here I feel like near the second half, like, she really loses a lot of her menace. Unfortunately, like, I still think she's a great villain. I think Glenn Close deserved a little bit of a better film. I still think it's a good thing for her. It's a good film for her, but the ending really gets to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the whole thing about Cruella is that she's supposed to be like a wolf in sheep's clothing, hence why she loves fur so much. And it makes sense at the end of the original movie, when you see her finally lose her composure, and, because you see, like, her car getting stripped away, you see her becoming more demonic and monster-like, as the movie goes on, and it's, her true self being revealed. That makes sense when she finally, gets her comeuppance. But in this movie, it's like they have to, like, literally pull her through the mud just to bring her down. So it just, it more like it's focusing on humiliating her rather than revealing her true essence. And I think they tried that was what they were trying to go for, but it didn't translate well to the screen. I still think the ending of, like, with her going through the whole barn scene was just an atrocity to the character, quite honestly.
Well, yeah, the whole barn scene was just horrible, honestly. Just a lot of that, like, her getting a pig falling on her. Like, she should have been dead from that, too. But, like, there's just a lot of stuff that I didn't like about that. But let's move on to Jasper and Horace, also known as Dr. House and Mr. Weasley.
Yeah, that's pretty much how they're known now by our generation. It's so It is so funny though, because like I had no idea who either one of those actors were at the time when I watched them, and granted they didn't have those roles at the time, so how would I know? But they did have, prior movie credits to their name, but it is funny in retrospect just to see those two characters teamed up in this sort of role, especially given what they go on later to play. So like it's still weird to me hearing Hugh Laurie like with his British accent, because I've been so used for so long for hearing his American accent from House. It's kind of jarring. It's like I had to go back and watch a bunch of Blackadders just to remind myself, oh yeah, he has a Cockney British accent and he was originally a comedian.
I really like these two. I think they did a great job with the role. I think they added much needed personality to the role, and I know Doug is kind of. I'm pretty sure Doug is gonna chime in and say that he wishes they were more menacing, but like I think what they did with the characters, adding more personality, like they still are the same characters, but they have more quirks to them, and they show a little bit more of who they are, and I think they're more fleshed out in this case. All right, Doug, chime in.
No, I mean, yeah, what you said is pretty accurate for the most part, though I think, while I don't think there was much for Jasper, I do kind of like what they did with Horace. I felt like they did give him a little more personality over his animated counterpart, because like you do get a couple of jokes from him in the animated one, but it's like other than that he kind of falls into the background for the most part. Here he stands out a little more, so I will give kudos on that. But yeah, definitely they lose a lot of their menace, particularly since they have the character of Skinner. So yeah, I mean, they pretty much, give all that menace to him. So I mean, that is lost on them for this one.
I mean, I don't think it's too much of a problem. I do agree that it is somewhat of a problem, but if you're going to have the Skinner character, I'd rather he be the serious one. Rather than having too many serious characters. They have Cruella for the over the top and the presence. You have Skinner for just the cold, emotionless, expressionless, not talking fear and menace. And then you have Jasper and Horace for the comedy, and I think that works. I think that was a good trade-off. Kat, what do you think?
Yeah, for the most part, I agree. I mean, they kind of turned Jasper into a sweet talker and Horace into pretty much a complete idiot. Granted, there are times where he does sort of mimic his original character in that he guesses correctly what the dogs are thinking. But yeah, they do dumb him down a lot, although he does have some legit funny moments. I still like the beginning when he first meets Mr. Skinner and Jasper like whispers to him ahead of time. It's like, okay, so look, this guy got attacked by a dog when he was young. He has a horrible scar. He can't talk, so just don't point it out. Don't say anything to him. Just leave the rest to me. And as soon as the guy opens the door, Horace is like, oh, look at the size of that scar. No wonder you can't bloody talk, mate. It's like, oh my god. I always laugh at that part. But yeah. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, given that this was going in the Home Alone direction and they were supposed to be, the two bumbling thugs, they pretty much fit the role pretty well, embodying the whole Harry and Marv archetype. I mean, I do feel they could have used a little more menace. I mean, they are shown that they were willing to kill the puppies ahead of time before Skinner got there, but I don't know. Like I felt like they could have been a little better, and I kind of felt like I don't know. I think after a point, the screenwriters just didn't quite know what to do with them, because after they chase the puppies and the puppies get away and they leave the mansion, they kind of just wander aimlessly until they're like, you know what, we're done. We're just gonna turn ourselves in. It's like, oh, okay. You're not gonna.
They could have left him at the manor.
Yeah, it's like if you were gonna do that, why not just knock them both out at the manor and leave them for the police to find? Why do you have to continue slogging them along for that one like nonsensical, not funny gag of the electric fence, and then just have them give up and turn themselves in. That makes it made no sense. It's like I get you want to give them as much screen time as possible, but it just do something that makes sense. Use your comedic characters wisely. That's what I'm trying to say.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your souls. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that after a while, they kind of got fed up with their characters, but a lot of the problems do go back into just the climax in general, and just how much they wanted it to be Home Alone, and it just didn't need to be Home Alone. So, all right, Jasper and Horace, we talked a little bit about Skinner. We talked about Cruella. We talked a little bit about Roger earlier. I do agree that he's not a good character. Anita, on the other hand, was actually much improved. She has much more of a backbone. And in this one, she's the one who starts off by saying that she's not selling the puppies, which Roger backs up. But it's just like she has a lot more personality and character in this one. And I feel like it's kind of wasted on Roger because he's not a very good character in this.
Yeah, he really isn't. Like, I have no idea why they chose Jeff Daniels for this. I'm not slamming the guy. I mean, he has done some funny roles, but this isn't really that much of a comedic role for him. I mean, Roger is supposed to be funny, but he's not, like Jasper and Horace funny. So, yeah, and the fact that he's, like, angry a lot of the time, it just, I don't know, he's just really off-putting. It's a shame because from what I read, they were supposed to have Hugh Grant play the character, and I could have seen him playing Roger a lot better than Jeff Daniels. So I have no idea.
Oh my god. Dude, Hugh Grant could play anything. He could read me the phone book, and I'd be like, you're good. You good.
I know, exactly. And it would have been fitting, too, because he's fucking British. And it just, I don't understand why Jeff Daniels had to be American. I mean, granted, Glenn Close is American, too, but, at least you couldn't tell by the accent she was doing. But with Jeff Daniels, it's like, obviously they had to make him American because he can't do accents. So, I don't know. I just didn't like it. Like I said, I just didn't like all of Roger's character in this. But as you said, I do like Anita actually sort of has an arc in this. Like, she starts off as just another one of Cruella's employees. She ends up becoming like her personal favorite or muse through the picture she drew with the Dalmatian dress. And she still is pretty much subservient to Cruella, like pretty much everyone is that works for her. But then, like, her peak moment, of course, is when she wants to buy the puppies. And even though Roger says throughout the whole thing, no, we're not giving them to you, like, Cruella discards him and is like, no, I want to hear what Anita has to say. She'll back me up because she works for me. And Anita's like, Cruella, I'm not selling the puppies. And it's like, yes, there! We got it, finally! Like, Anita's no longer that pushover in the original. She's no longer dumb. She finally stands up to Cruella and tells her to fuck off. Like, that was perfect.
Not only that, but she's the one who finds the sketch and puts two and two together that Cruella was the one who stole the puppies.
Yeah, granted, I thought that took a little too long for her to figure out, because you think that would have been a little obvious, but I mean, at the same time, yeah, I am glad that at least it wasn't like in the movie where they're like, oh, well, she was investigated by Scotland Yard, so clearly she didn't do it. It's like, no. You know for a fact that it was her main goal to capture your puppies, and then they suddenly go missing. You know that she did it.
A bit of a side note, but Scotland Yard has actually given a lot more respect than in the past two movies. Mm-hmm. Wow.
They actually do their job.
Yeah, they raid her mansion and they're like, oh, she's not here, but we have record of her buying puppies and we found the tiger. I'm like, yes.
So yes, you have substantious evidence.
Apparently one officer has really good vision because he can see the Dalmatians out in the snow from a really far distance. Go figure.
It's like, who knew police officers in England like had that sort of vision? But then again, they deal with that kind of bad weather all the time. So who knows?
Doug, what do you think of Roger and Anita while we're on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree that Yeah, Jeff Daniels was a miscast. I do agree with you on Anita, although I feel like as far as like the Anita Roger relationship in this, it's a little weird. So for starters, like when Roger comes and he's trying to grab Pongo and mistakens him for her for mistakens Purdy for Pongo, and then she's like threatening him with like the bag of bricks and hits him with it, and then realizes, oh wait, we have Dalmatian too. I'm going to strike up conversation, and she's like then legitimately interested in him, and he's being an asshole, and it just keeps going, and then it's like all of a sudden they're in a like, hey, we have puppies, you want to get in a relationship? Okay.
Oh my god, can we talk about
It's
that for a
like,
second? Like, that part still gets me. Like, even when I watched it as a kid, I'm like, what the heck? So let me just reiterate. So in the original 101 Dalmatians, Pongo sets it up so that Roger and Anita manage to meet in the park, and even though they barely say a word to each other, apparently they do. The plan works. They do end up getting together. They do get married and they move in together. Um, they're not exactly specific in how long all of that takes, although I think Pongo mentions in one of his narrations that like a month later after they met, they moved in together, and we had already shown that they had like a small little ceremony in a church somewhere. So great. So like the movie is just vague enough to make you think that at least an extended amount of time has passed before they fell in love and got married and everything. In this movie, they not only did they meet and fall in love on the same day, but Roger actually proposes marriage to her, and then they end up doing it all on the same day. And like, I'm like, what? It's like, just because you have two.
I have just met you.
Yes, I have just met you, and I love you. But it's like, I get this is a Disney film. That was the big staple of all these films, both in the Golden Era, in the Renaissance, like pretty much everything before the 2000s. But this is one of the like most forced, awkward, like quickest romances I've ever seen put together. And this is supposed to take place in modern day, 1996. How many couples do you know go through the levels of relationship that quickly in one day? It made no sense. And then they have like a wedding almost immediately afterward, and then immediately afterward Anita finds out she's pregnant. It's like, did somebody put the movie into fast forward or something? Like, what the hell's going on? Like, I don't know, that whole
if I may quote Elsa, if I may quote Elsa from Frozen, it's like, you're just gonna marry this guy who you met on the same day?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, and there's no logical like I could maybe understand if the relationship was as compelling as Anna and Hans was in the Frozen movie, but it's not. He spends most of their time together being angry at her and her trying to apologize, and then they find out, oh, our dogs are in love. What are we gonna do about this? I know, let's get married. Logical conclusion much? I don't know, that I did not like that change at all. It made no goddamn sense. Like, I can understand if they had like an instant connection or something, or you can tell that they were made for each other, but there is nothing there, and there was nothing that justified that quick of a marriage. Like, absolutely nothing. It's like, ugh. I'm like, Disney, like, I love you, but your Disneyisms, they get to be too much sometimes.
But yeah, I do. I agree with you on that. I think it was very much too much of a Disneyism, and I'm really glad that we're nowadays in a lot of the modern films we're undoing those stereotypes, those Disneyisms that just, I don't know why they became a thing in the first place, but it's just like it's way too much. And while I found the dialogue charmingly written, I can't agree that it was way too fast, and that just, all overall it was too much. We're Disney. We're doing this just because.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a romantic. I actually do fall for that kind of stuff in a lot, especially in a lot of the older films where it's more acceptable. And, if a romance is done right and you can clearly tell that the couple have something going on, it's like, why wait? But that's the whole thing. You have to make the couple compelling. They don't do that in this movie. And had it taken place back in, when the original took place, it might have made more sense. But in this, it's much harder to swallow. It's more infuriating than anything.
So I believe that's all the characters. We mentioned that the dogs don't talk, so there's no Pongo and Perdita, and there's not really any major side characters since all the animals don't talk.
Nanny.
What's that?
Nanny.
Oh, Nanny. She's all right. She's not as much of she's not as much of an entity in this film that she was in the animated films.
Honestly, I didn't really care for Nanny in this version. I felt like a lot of her dialogue was kind of like, either exposition or, a lot of like flowery, like description type language. I'm not sure how to put it. Like the whole thing where
she was spouting wisdom.
Yeah, like the scene where she makes the revelation that she knows that Purdy is pregnant, and she's like describing how she knows, and like, oh, her eyes are soft and warm, and even though you can't tell, she's smiling, and I'm like, she's a fucking dog. How do you know all this shit? And then she like makes the same assumption about Anita, and then like later on when they're trying to figure out who took the dog, she's like, oh, I guarantee you that the dogs, they went after to look for the puppies because they can smell ill will when it comes to certain people. And it's like, yeah, no shit. I don't know, like a lot of her dialogue kind of reminded me of like of Alfred's from The Dark Knight. How he was always
Yes, she's Michael Caine.
Pretty much, like, a lot of Michael Caine's dialogue, that kind of, like, was her dialogue in this movie. It was meant to, sort of be this whole, like, like, this whole, like, not real dialogue.
For this big speech.
Yeah, like, a semi, like, big speech with all, like, with all these, like, isms and stuff, and it was kind of weird to me. Because Nanny's not like that, she's just, like, this lovable little housekeeper. And, she's there just to, take care of the dogs and help the couple and everything. She never really had any big, like, things like that. Not to mention, I think she put up a bit more of a fight than the movie version did when Jasper and Horace came along.
Now, you see, Mr. Wayne, when a dog loves someone very much, he wants to watch the world burn. That's how it is. Okay, now I can't see anything else because that's exactly what I was thinking. Michael Caine as the nanny.
Oh God. Oh jeez.
That's gonna be the title card.
Thanks. Make more work for me.
You would do it anyway.
Yeah. So I know that they're not really characters in this, but I thought we should talk about the animals at least. I know they don't talk, or there's no like distinguishable way of like understanding what they're saying, but all in all, I still think a lot of the animals in this movie were very well trained. Like when they were there anyway, because I know a lot of the times the animals are either represented by puppets or CGI, but the ones that actually were there, you could tell were there, like I thought they actually were very well trained, which is kind of a miracle considering, Dalmatians are notoriously hard to train, especially in their older years.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that there were so many different kinds of animals and the way they trained them was great. My complaint is that there's so many different kinds of animals when in the original there wasn't too many. Like, did we need the raccoons?
Yeah, I don't understand that, because, like, you saw other dogs, because they're the ones that pass along the message of the Twilight Bark. We see, like, a goose at one point, and then we get to the three characters, with Sergeant Tibbs, the captain, the colonel. They're the ones that, help rescue the puppies. But then this movie, they throw in, like, every animal conceivable. It's like every animal that shows up in the United Kingdom. It just, and it doesn't really make sense, because I keep thinking to myself, like, so wait, do these animals understand dog language? Are they using, like, a universal animal language? Like, what's going on here? And I gotta say, I am disappointed with the lack of Sergeant Tibbs, although I understand why
Ditto.
he's not in this movie. Because, granted, there are such things as trained cats, but to have a cat do the sort of things that Sergeant Tibbs did in the original would have been impossible unless they made, the thing a puppet or CGI. So, I mean, it's disappointing, but I understand why.
Mm-hmm. They at least had a shaggy. They at least had a shaggy dog in there, and so that was awesome. Like every time I see that, though, like I just have the patent voice, like on the double Tibbs.
Yes, sir. Right, sir. Right away, sir.
And
Boulder Dash.
so we'll be so let's get this straight. So after all the stuff in the Shaggy dog and the Shaggy DA and retiring, we'll be just turned into a dog and just decided to retire as a dog. Is that the explanation we're going with?
I guess so. I guess he changed colors, moved to England, and, just decided to retire somewhere until he got caught up in the events of 101 Dalmatians, I guess. I mean, for all we know, it could be Wilby. I mean, the dog is never given a name throughout the entire film. So, I mean, we never see his owner. He's never called by anything. He's just a character just made up and just fills the role of Sergeant Tibbs. Although I do like how, despite that, he's still kind of an animated character in a sense, given how, like, they have the dog trained to do all these, like, tricks and stuff. Like, he's trying to explain to all the barn animals that he knows what happened to the puppies, and he's trying to show that they got kidnapped, and he's, like, crawling into a bag and whining, and then crawling out of the bag and picking it up and putting it over his shoulder and then hopping away with it. I'm like, this is a smart ass dog. Who owns this dog?
So wait a second, Santa Claus got kidnapped and we have to go save Santa.
Yeah. Granted, though, it's still a shame we don't have those three characters from the movie, but, I mean, what are you really going to do if they're not going to give them, personalities or voices or anything like that? So.
Yeah, it is a shame. The animals are very well trained, and they didn't. I'm glad they didn't make any CG animals, because we did get one CG shot when basically the Dalmatians were sliding down a drain pipe. And I don't think it was very necessary, because it was pretty obviously bad CGI.
It was, but I mean, it was the only logical way they can do that, because honestly, would you really want to see them drop a puppy down a drain pipe?
No animals were harmed in the making of this film.
They actually do it better later, where they showcase them going down into the hole, and then they have the shot to where they're climbing out the other side, and you can clearly see this is where they ended up. They didn't even need the CG slide down in the first place.
True. Yeah, they could have easily cut that part off, because it's like, do you really need to see the inside of the drain pipe? Like, no.
That drain pipe is filthy.
Like it felt to me like I was watching like a CD based game when they were like sliding down like an FMV. It was very funny.
Actually, another thing I thought was weird and kind of disappointing was that once again we have some of the puppies that Pongo and Perdita have that have names. Like, granted, in the original, they're actually given personalities since we hear them talk. In this one, they still get names, but they're completely different from the original, and they're only based on what the Dalmatians individually look like, or certain things that they do. And look, in retrospect, it's kind of weird, but I understand why, because, marketing. It's like, if we're gonna sell Dalmatian toys, we may as well give them names. So here, you're this dog, and you're that dog, and you're this dog. And then we'll just market. Merchandising. Yeah, because we don't get Patch, we don't get Rolly. Lucky's still there, although he doesn't do anything. Instead, we get was it I'm trying to remember the name,
Wizard.
Wizard, Jewel, Two Tone, Fidget, and it's like none of them really do anything. Like they just have like they either look a certain way or they have a certain quirk, and that's about it. Like I think Wizard's the only one that really does anything, and that he's supposed to be like the mischievous one. But it's like, why don't you just make that Patch? Or like, I mean, Patch got his own sequel and everything. Why not make a live version of him? That it makes no sense, especially since from what I heard in the original marketing for this, they had a dog that looked like Patch. So if anything, that was false advertising.
And not to mention the fact that these names and character traits are horrible. Like Whizzer, Dipstick. Like Wizard's entire thing is that he pees.
Mm-hmm.
There's one Dipstick farts. Like,
well, no, Dipstick just had like a black tail. That was why he was called that.
yeah, but it wasn't there one that farted. I don't know. Like,
I think there was more. I think it was more just puppy moaning. I don't think it was farting so much as like puppy moaning.
Okay, but like just Whizzer in general, I was like, no, we didn't need this for an unfunny gag about peeing, and like, no. I'm sorry, but that's something about the '90s that needs to die. The pee jokes, it's not funny.
Yeah.
Like, when you're doing toilet humor, you have to do it a certain way. I think they did a good job in The Lion King where they don't really address it. Like, it's hinted at, but they don't actually go with it, and I think that works
right
for the most part. It just, I didn't like a lot of that stuff.
I also wish Pongo and Purdy were more active like they were in the original, because in the first one you see like all the trouble that they go through to look for their puppies, and then they end up like fighting Horace and Jasper one-on-one in order to save them last minute. And then, like, you see as they're, like, sneaking them through that village and everything. Like, they're really proactive parents, probably the most proactive parents in any Disney film. But in this film, it's like they show up and the rest of the animals have already done the grunt work and have already rescued their puppies for them. And it's like all they're there for is just to tag along as they run away from the bad guys. Like, it's kind of disappointing. Like, I get they don't want to show too much violence, and I understand they didn't want to put the actors through getting attacked by dogs, even if they did have the proper padding, but still that was one of like the more memorable parts of the original film. So it's a shame that the dogs didn't get that much to do in this film.
I can agree with that.
Except when they're trying to get Pongo and Purdy together.
Oh god, that scene went on
took
forever.
Way too long.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
Yeah, the scene we're referring to is when when Pongo first sees Purdy. It's love at first sight, and Roger's trying to go home. He has Pongo's leash attached to his bike. Pongo takes off and pretty much drags Roger on his bike through all aspects of like the town in like a 10-minute like chase scene, and none of it makes sense because it's like, first of all, why can't you brake the bike? Second of all, why don't you jump off the bike? Third of all, why don't you tell other people to grab your dog or grab you to slow him down? Like, none of it makes sense. And then the same thing happens again later after Pongo meets Purdy. She starts chasing after him, dragging Anita on her bike, but that only lasts for like 2 minutes because then she runs off and immediately Anita goes into the lake. Yeah, those scenes did not need to be as long as they were, nor repeated.
Yeah, that was completely unnecessary, and while I did kind of find it funny, it dragged on for far too long. It was very padded.
You can do like a shot game for like how many times Roger yelled Pongo. It's like yelling his name is not going to do anything by this point.
All right, so we've definitely talked about a large portion of the movie. I don't think there's too much else left to cover. So Doug, why don't you lead in with your final thoughts on the live-action film?
So yeah, I mean, it's basically what I said at the beginning. I don't really like this film. I think the original animated one is better. I do enjoy certain aspects of it. I think there are some improvements over the original animated film, but on the whole, I just feel like it's lazy. It's, overly slapsticky. It kind of loses the spirit of the original, and definitely loses, something in translation, not having the animals speak. It is definitely a product of its time, and I kind of think it should just remain there. Keep releasing the animated movie. Leave this one on DVD. It hasn't been released on Blu-ray yet. I wouldn't even bother with it.
And Kat?
I'm still pretty much 50-50 on this movie. Like, there are some parts I definitely like, such as the Anita and Cruella's relationship in the beginning, as well as Glenn Close's performance. Like I said, I like how well trained the animals are, and certain little aspects. But for the most part, it's a valiant attempt to recreate the original, but it did not quite capture that. And as we mentioned, I don't like how after a certain point it kind of just like becomes a whole new movie. It goes into Home Alone territory. It pretty much destroys all the dignity and sophistication of Cruella by basically making her the comedic pratfall when really we already had two characters for that. And I just think that certain things could have been handled better, like could have been structured and paced better. I still do give it props though for for everything that it did do. And I mean, when you think about it, this is like the first mostly decent live action Disney adaptation we've ever had. So again, I call it a good valiant attempt, but not quite there. So yeah.
Personally, I see the problems, but I really do love this version, and I think that's interesting because Kat split. Doug doesn't really like it. I love it mostly because of my childhood, but I think while there are indeed problems, especially the second half, they're not enough to make me not like the film. I think visually, cinematically, it's perfect. I think acting-wise, it's really, really good. For the most part, obviously, Roger is a problem, but like other than that, it's great. I mean, yeah, there's a lot lost not understanding the dogs, but like if you're going to do a live action like 101 Dalmatians, this is what I wanted. You like the first thing you need to nail is Cruella De Vil. They nailed Cruella De Vil. This is the role that Glenn Close was born to play. And honestly, I think that it was just so enjoyable. Even despite the problems, even during the Home Alone bits, even during like the whizzing dog segments, like this is still a very enjoyable film for me. And while critically, I will agree that there's quite a few problems, and it does date itself. I always have fun watching this film. This is one that I was looking forward to, and I'm looking forward to the next one even more because we get Cruella baked into a cake.
Oh, God.
So,
God.
I'm sorry, I love that sequence so damn much. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, like I said, it's the entertaining bits of the film outweigh the criticisms that I can lobby. I still think this was a fun film. It's much more enjoyable than anything we've seen from Disney live action in the past, few films. And so I don't think it's that bad. I think it's worth your time. I think if you're a fan of 101 Dalmatians, you should at least give it a shot, give it a look, because while these two have differing opinions than I do, I think that these differing opinions represent that you might be able to find some enjoyment in this film as well.
Yeah, Angelina Jolie, take note. This is how a villain is supposed to be betrayed, both when she's doing dialogue from the original and when she's not.
All right, with all of that being said, I am Zenith will rule.
I'm Kat Macberrie.
I'm Doug Macberrie.
And we will see you next time as we talk about 102 Dalmatians, the title that the first sequel should have used. And we're going to watch as Glenn Close gets baked into a cake.
Stop reminding me of that. Ugh.
See you guys next time.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
I wonder what that tastes like.
it's devil flavored, obviously.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/Zenith Will Review.
I agree with that. Can you hear my cat, by the way? She crashed the stream.
No, I couldn't hear.
Crashed the pod. Okay.
She got fed up with talk of dogs.
And now she's gone. Okay. But yeah, for the bloopers, Chiaki basically came up to me. She just jumped into my lap and she started like purring really, really loudly as you were doing your thing. And I'm like, oh God, please don't show up on the podcast. God damn it, Chiaki, I love you, but now's not the time to be loved.